And welcome to a warm, sunny South African morning. You can see we've got some hornbills that are very chirpy already for a Monday morning. You would think that they would be a bit sad that it is Monday and that they have to go to work, but they seem as though they're very happy. My name is Tristan, and on camera today I've got Fergus, and entering from the left-hand side of the screen is also a big bull elephant. Hello, good morning, young lad, or big lad should I say. Don't know where he's come from, but all of a sudden he's just decided to appear, so that's very, very nice of him, and hopefully he'll stick around for a bit because he's a beautiful big individual. Now this is live, it is interactive, so hashtag Safari Live on Twitter or YouTube chat if you want to ask us any questions, or just chat to me because it's just me for the first half an hour of the show, and so it's always nice when everybody helps out and asks lots of questions, so hopefully that will be the case. Now I don't know where our big male elephant's going. He seems to have his trunk down and is sniffing around, so I think that maybe, just maybe, he's following a herd that is potentially moved through this area. I saw tracks for some individuals just now, and so I'm wondering if that's why he is around, but he's just slowly ambling his way and disappearing as quick as he appeared, that's for sure, because he kind of just came out of nowhere. We were just sitting here watching the hornbills, and next thing a giant elephant made its appearance. Ferg, let's try and get you a better view because he's starting to feed, and so he's behind a bush for Fergus. Let's try and sort this out and make it slightly better, because at the end of the day no one wants to see just a bush with no elephant at all. Here we go, Ferg. I think from this angle we should be better. Let's try from here. How's that? Now I wonder, a little bit more? No, we're good? Spot on, thank you, Fergus. Now, is this Daryl? I can't see nicely. There's an elephant that's around here that's got a bell-shaped hole in his ear, and so I know some of you would be able to know better off whether that is Daryl or not. I don't think it's Daryl. It doesn't look like quite the right shape, but I might be wrong. Maybe some of you will be able to tell me, because if it is Daryl, well then that's the individual that Scott has had an amazing encounter with, and Taylor has countless stories of Daryl from when she was down in the southern part of the Sabi sands, and I haven't seen him for quite some time, so I can't remember now if that is the shape of the little hole in his ear or if there's a slightly different shape to it than that. But it's amazing. Look at that massive bull elephant just disappears as soon as they go behind vegetation. That grey body is actually incredibly difficult to spot, and there we go, coming out now. But nice big beautiful thick tusks as well, which is typical of a nice old bull ellie. You know, a very gentle giant as well. He's not given us one iota of even a stare. He just knows I'm the big strong individual. Now it is very thick in there, so I'm not going to follow him, because ideally we are just going to end up chasing him, and I don't really want to chase him in any way whatsoever. And plus I've already done enough damage to Rusty this week that I don't really want to do more, although it's a new week, isn't it, folks? So maybe we can risk these things. It is a new week, and Mondays mean that we can go a bit crazy. Of course we don't actually have the spare parts to fix Rusty that I broke last week, so let's actually not go crazy until tomorrow when the new parts arrive. Right, well that was a nice start to the morning. Wonderful, I'm very happy. Now Scott is calling me on the radio, which is always a good thing. Scotty is not on drive this morning, but maybe he's heard something from camp. Scott. It's always good just to chat to him, just to hear what's going. We still have a view of our elephant over there. Alright, copy that. Thanks, Scotty. So Scotty was just letting me know that he went to quickly go and check on that kill to give me a hand this morning, to be almost like a tracking team, and to go and see if he can find anything while we're driving around. Scott is always very good with these things. He always tries to lend a hand, even if he's supposed to be having a morning off. He's out and about trying to check around what's going on, and he says that Tundi's kill, the head is still dangling from the tree. Hyenas are still there jumping around trying to get to it, but at this stage, no luck for them. They're not able to grab anymore. They've trimmed that impala neck to the point where they can no longer get any grip on it, and Tanya doesn't seem to have come back just yet. So what we'll do is we'll just quickly check her den. We're right here. We might as well just have a little look quickly and see if there is any sign of her at the den site itself, because our elephant has meandered off. And then if there's no sign of her at the den site, well, I think we're going to just go and check around and see what's happening. I might go back up towards Sydney's Dam area because of those buffalo that we saw there yesterday. Maybe some lions have come into Djuma. It's been so long since I've seen a lion, I don't really actually know if I'll even identify one if I do see it, but that's the plan anyway, what I think we're going to do. Sound fun, Ferg?
That does.
And then of course, while Fergus is on camera, it's always important that I keep my eye out for the wild dogs, because Fergus loves the wild dogs and we want to keep our cameramen happy, so I should look for them too. Now hopefully Rusty's going to behave this morning, because yesterday Rusty had a few gremlin issues in this particular area, and so I'm hoping that today we are not going to have a repeat performance of that, because otherwise it's going to be a slight problem. Kobe, sorry, you said you missed the last few drives and you would like to get an update on what's been happening. Well, let's run through seeing the last few drives. So the last few drives have been hot. They have been full of elephants. We have had elephants in the Mara and here in South Africa. We've had Tundi. We have which is just sitting over there having a little foot grooming session. So dangerous times for a scrub hare. You wouldn't want to be a scrub hare near a leopard den, I don't think. And then we've had, so Tundi's had this kill where she's been going back and forth. We've then discovered where the new den is. Scott had a brief glimpse of the cub yesterday morning, as well as a nice sighting of Tundi. We had Hosanna with a tortoise kill yesterday, or tortoise, I don't think he killed it, but he carried a tortoise around for a bit. Tingana as well yesterday morning, disappearing. South of us, I think 2 days. It's always a long time, 2 days. That's about it really. We haven't had too much luck with any lions around. Wild dogs were last seen on Friday by James, and that's really, like I say, oh, and a buffalo herd yesterday afternoon, which was quite nice. So buffalo herd on our northern fringes going northwards back into the Manyeleti. So that's pretty much the sum total of what's been happening, but the den is really the biggest news, is that we found the new den since she's moved it on last week, so that's really good. That's why we are where we are, is we down here to, not because we wanted to find the scrub hare, which is really nice to find, because obviously scrub hares are nocturnal and we don't see them that much during the day, but always wonderful to see one, and particularly when it's as relaxed as this. Generally they're a little bit more shy and they kind of move around, and you can see it's trimming the grass quite quickly, and those big ears and massive eye, so it's a last little feed before the sun comes up and it goes and hides away. There we go. Right, now apparently gremlins, so I'm going slowly to stay away. I'm not sure this is going to work. I might have to come here a little bit once things have kind of worked themselves out, and when we've got a couple other feeds, so that I don't just destroy the whole show by coming down here. But anyway, getting back to the question about the hare, so the scrub hare name, hare is, it's different from a rabbit, so it has the characteristics of a hare. It's got those long ears, it's nocturnal, it tends to have young that are born underneath the bush and just able to move around, and it is more of a rabbit than right. So our gremlin issue is still persisting, but it means that we've allowed to get it just into the den itself, and we're in the area of where the den is, or where I think it is. I haven't actually seen the new den or where she's lying, but this is roughly where Scott had her yesterday. So we have this kind of thicket with a couple fallen over trees, particularly that fallen over acacia, which has got nice big sharp thorns that little cub can get into and just kind of hide away. And then you've got a number of eroded gullies that are around here, so it's a great place for a leopard to spend time. It's actually a really nice den spot, and Tundi seems to be choosing really great places to have a little one. So it's in these kind of sections here. Now, with her, it's always important just to try and approach nice and slowly and check very carefully, and that you don't just rush in, kind of drive straight into her, because she can get a little bit upset if that is the case. And why not? At the end of the day, you know, she's having a cub in a new area. She doesn't know this section very well, and so she has to kind of be quite defensive to make sure that she keeps her cub safe. So what we're going to do is we're just going to go around quickly and just a little bit further, because I believe yesterday with Scott that she was lying underneath the fallen over tree that I was talking about just now, and so we won't be able to see from here. We'll need to just go round slightly to be able to get a good look. Now I'm hoping that the gremlins play along and they don't jump on while I go through this little dip. Sneak up the side. Of course, she might not be here, you know, after spending much. Now I apologize, I believe we are getting a bit of breakup. We are up now. There's a duiker, which is not a good sign that there's a leopard around here. Tiger just came running out of this area, which is not a good place to be. The scrub here is one thing, but a duiker around a leopard den, I feel like, is a sort of way of almost committing duiker suicide, because if you're anywhere near a leopard, and particularly Tundi, she absolutely loves duiker, so not an ideal place for her to be. But I'm just having a look here on the left hand side is where we basically are looking. So let's just go forward a bit, Ferg, because then we don't have to worry too much about I don't see anything. So Philip, you're asking how varied are leopard personalities. Well, very varied. They're all very different animals, and the way that they interact with not only their environment but us is all very different. So you'll find Tundi, she tends to be a little bit more aggressive than maybe somebody like Salahesh was. Salahesh was an absolute dream with her cubs. She never even blinked an eyelid at us, and we used to be able to kind of approach right up to the cubs, even from day one. She on foot, on a vehicle, whereas Tundi is a lot more aggressive about what goes on. So she's a lot more defensive, a lot more kind of proactive about defending her cub, and she doesn't matter if it's a hyena or a lion or us. She'll have her personal boundary, and then she'll kind of utilize that, and if you could cross that, then she's very aggressive towards it. So it just depends on the individual, but they all do have very different personalities, and their behavior is always very different. It's the same as Hosana, Shongile. Even they had different personalities growing up. If we think about the bushwalks, Hosana was never as comfortable as what Shongile was when we were on bushwalk. Shongile used to just watch and look at us, whereas, you know, Hosana would move away. And I'm quite interested to know if Hosana is slightly different nowadays, that he's gotten a bit bigger and bulkier and maybe a bit more assured of himself, but it doesn't seem as though he's too kind of phased these days, but you never know. So it's interesting, they're all different. Now I'm looking down into this little ditch, and so that little tree area there is apparently where Scott said he saw her yesterday with the cub, was in amongst this sort of area. Now there's no sign of her that I can see today. That doesn't look like she is here, and I, to be honest, was not that confident that she'd be here. You know, she spent a long time at a kill. She was having a situation where she was feeding off an impala for a few days. She's been here with the cub and kind of back and forth, and she's done very little patrolling of the area and checking what's going on. And so it means that she's got a situation where, you know, she needs to get out. She needs to start kind of trying to patrol and to scent mark, and just to keep others away. There's a little ring-necked dove, or Cape turtle dove, that is sitting also nice and puffed out in our little acacia. It's obviously a little cooler this morning than it was yesterday afternoon, because yesterday afternoon felt like we were in the pits of hell at one point, because it was really very, very, very hot. And so quite nice to have a bit of cool weather, and that's why that dove is all puffed up, is because it is a little cooler this morning. So it's just trying to trap some body heat. But alas, I don't think Tundi is here, so we'll probably try and come back a little later on in the day. Maybe she's out hunting or has been scent marking, and she'll come back and make an appearance later on. But nice to know where it is. It's a beautiful spot, and I was commenting yesterday, I was here yesterday afternoon just to have a little look, and I was commenting yesterday, this will be such a nice playground for a cub once it starts getting a bit more mobile. Is Liz, you wondering if Thandi will be more aggressive because she's in an area that she's not too familiar with? Well, I mean, yes, that's probably part of it. Although she does know this area, she grew up in this section, but a lot has changed in the 9 years since she was on this particular area, and so she's probably is a little bit nervous of things. She doesn't quite know exactly what's going on. Also, remember that things are not settled at the moment. So, there's different males coming in and out. There's these young males that have been hanging around in the form of her own son Tamba, as well as Hosanna, and then you've got a situation where you've got these females. So Shadow has been pushing in, you've got at one point she had Shungile, and so I'm sure she's feeling a little uncomfortable about all of it, and it's why she's probably overly aggressive about the den sites that she's got, and overly kind of defensive about it. And it's a needed thing, because at the end of the day she's still working out exactly where the best spots are. But what's amazing to me is that even though as a small little cub she was spending time in certain dens, she's pretty much using every den that Karula has used. So I've been asking the guys that have spent a lot of time with Karula, and she's pretty much following the same pattern. She's using exact same spots that she probably was put in as a cub, which is fascinating to me that she can remember that and know that those were safe areas for her and her sister in the form of Shadow, and she's now using them as a mother, which is really quite amazing. Right, I think what we're going to do is probably just move on and leave this area, because at the end of the day, if mom is not around, then it is a situation where the den is closed. So probably start just moving out. I'll go slowly just in case she is somewhere here. Now Michael, you're wondering if it's been documented that female leopards use the same den sites as when they're cubs. So not always. At the end of the day, some females end up being shifted and don't get their mother's territory. So if you think of a case with Shadow now, Shadow is not anywhere near this area, and it's not anywhere near, it's probably a bit of a stretch, but Shadow's not spending as much time in this section as what Thandi is, and so Shadow theoretically is not going to be using Karula's den sites. If you look at, let's say, Salesh and Insele was her daughter, and Insele was pushed quite far to the west, so it's not always the case. But if they can get their mom's territory, then they most certainly will utilize it. Now while I'm just on this little corner, because the way that the bank is shaped, I can't see in underneath a little thicket, so I just wanted to check from this angle quickly. No, I don't see any spots or eyes peering back at me, so it seems as though she's not home this morning, which is fine. That's perfect, it's okay. But can you imagine later if this little cub stays here for a few weeks and it gets a little bit more bold, because it's going to be starting to learn to climb. But imagine it climbing up and down this tree with Thandi as well. It's just such a nice place with lots of things going on that it could be some amazing views of this little one, and we've got a lot to look forward to. Hopefully Thandi can keep it safe, and then we've got a lot to look forward to in the way of little cubs and things all over these areas. Right, so I'm going to get into a question shortly. I want to quickly cross here so we don't get that black screen again. Off now. Right, so there we go. So we've now crossed the one. Now, cousin, you're wondering if it's usual for leopards to move into new territories and utilize den or breeding areas where they are new to. So the answer to that is yes, it is common, particularly when a female or a dominant individual has lost her territory. So we're going to lose reception going through here, so I'll just stop and quickly talk about this. But it is very common when a dominant female loses territory and one of her offspring that knows that that is a really good area is on the fringes of her, they will definitely push back and they will use their natal territory to den. So if you look at Tiani at the moment, Tiani's gone into Salahesh's territory. So for those of you who don't know who that is, Salahesh was a female leopard to the west of us and kind of held the adjacent territory to Karula in the northwest, and she unfortunately died last year or this year, and her daughter, who was pushing away at one point before she died, has now gone straight back to there and is using her natal territory as her own, and then is marking and utilizing that. So you'll have a situation when you have these kind of adjacent females, they'll push back to their natal area and they will then start to try and utilize that and try and check and just see what's going on and use dens that they've survived survived in themselves. At the end of the day, they know that that was a safe place for them, and so they go back to use it. So it's a very clever thing to do, and at the end of the day, it seems to work really well. And it's not the first leopard in the form of Thandi to exercise this role and to actually do it. So very clever, and she does actually have, well, she's found herself a perfect place. Now, I'm sorry about this, but we are going to get a little breakup and black screen. Hold on tight for the next few minutes as I just cross through here. It won't take me long, and we'll be out and about and then can carry on. Right, so there we go. Sorry about that, everybody. It would have been worth it had we seen little ball spots bouncing around. But that's the gamble you take. A den site is never a constant and never something that you can always bank on. And so you will have situations where, look at that, Fergus. So Fergus is telling me that there is a beautiful sunrise that is coming up with a dead tree next to it. So Fergus, is that okay? Yes, there we go. So there's the dead tree framing our sunrise. And as I was saying, that a den is never a guarantee, and so it's always worth to check it. And you, I mean, 9 times out of 10 you probably won't have the leopard there. It's not a very good ratio. At the end of the day, she's got lots to do. She's got food to get, she's got territory to mark, and so she doesn't spend all day every day there, and certainly doesn't wait for us to arrive before she then departs. So it's one of those things, and we just got to keep being patient, and eventually we will get it right and we will find her. But how beautiful is that? That's not a bad way to start one's day. And wouldn't it be nice if there was a leopard in that tree just kind of peering at us, silhouetted against that golden backdrop? That would be a wish or a dream come true, I think, for many of us. I would think so. It would be very nice, wouldn't you think, Ferg? Mm-hmm. I think so, exactly. Right. Now, plan B, Fergus. Let's go and check around. Maybe let's check some of the water holes. We'll see down towards the southern boundary. You never know. Maybe Shadow and Cub have decided to come back after yesterday. They were right on our southern boundary yesterday. Hosanna was also mobile towards the sort of southern boundary. So, worth maybe checking down that way and just seeing. Also, probably be a good idea to get out of low range at this stage, because we don't need that anymore. And the car is going to jerk forward otherwise. Right. It doesn't really say that Thandi wants to be seen with her cup. She keeps moving. So, and would she move out of Djuma? So the thing is that it's not that she doesn't want to be seen with the cup. The cup now has been too young for us to actually even try and look for her. So we haven't been looking for her. We've just been kind of surmising where we think the den is, and that cub was far too young to walk around, and so we shouldn't really have been seeing it over the last few weeks. It's only now getting to 7 weeks old, so little tiny little thing, and is really kind of quite sort of small, and so it's not a surprise to me that we haven't been seeing it. And in this situation and her moving, she will move den every 2 to 3 days, 3 weeks, because at the end of the day that little one is urinating, it's defecating, and that there's also a flea infestation that takes place if they stay in the den for too long, and so you have these its area. So her den has basically gone from everyone, and unfortunately is part of being live out here, and it's also just, you know, with just me out, it's a bit difficult. I didn't think we'd lose reception there. We've had reception there the last few days, and so it's obviously just a new thing that Rusty's decided. It does change from day to day according to humidity and temperature and all of those kind of things. But as I was saying, we'll get back into the Tundi kind of moving den story. So her den sites have not really shifted much from a central point of Djuma, so she's not like she's gone far south, far north, far east or far west. She's really is slap bang in the middle of Djuma at the moment, and her den has gone, like I say, it's gone a little bit southeast, then it's come back northwest again, and so she seems to be using this Mulawati drainage system, and the chances of her moving the cub off, I think, is very slim. And the reason why I say that is because south of her at the moment is Shadow and cub, and Shadow is not going to be too kindly to a female with a cub. Also, Tundi doesn't want to expose that cub to that risk. At the end of the day, another female leopard, even though it's probably not going to kill the cub like a male would, it's still a risk, because if she comes across it, you never know what can happen. A fight can ensue and that little cub can be. So she's not going to push it south. There's also at the bottom, there's also Tingana, Hosana, Tumba, Kuchava. They're all south of her at the moment, so that's keeping her on this northern side. What she might do is she might push a bit east into Torchwood, but then she's got to deal with the fact that quarantine is there, and that's a different male that then we think mated with her, so that's going to be a problem. Then you've got on the other side, eastern side, you've got a whole list of new male leopards. There's a number of young females. I've sorry about that, everybody. It's unfortunately seems as though Rusty just can't do twin dams at the moment, so we're trying to come as west as possible to try and get to the Garo pizza side, so that we'll have nice reception and won't have to worry too much, and hopefully that will be the last of our. So, First Lady, you're wondering when we're going to give a name to Shadow's. We're not going to be giving her a name at all, unfortunately. It's got to do with Wild Earth. Fortunately, it was born on Arathusa, and so it's up to the Arathusa guys that traverse the western side to be giving her a name. So, unfortunately, that's got nothing to do with us at this stage, but getting a name now in January. The middle probably in January that it will be getting its sort of name, and we'll be able to kind of refer to it as something other than Shadow's cub. So yeah, not Barbara, as apparently as Ferg is telling me. James will be very sad if we don't choose Barbara, because James, it's apparently now not Barbara. Franklin are busy having a little script. I would imagine that little, that cub will be, like I say, named fairly shortly. I haven't heard any rumors of it being named yet, so I would imagine shortly, though, it will be, and then probably only in the new year, though. That's a beautiful little pair of crested franklins. I wonder if this is the nesting pair that Scott had around here, whose nest was invaded and unfortunately the eggs were taken. It surprises me. I was saying this to Ferg yesterday when Scott was talking about the nest, is that it is absolutely astounding to me that these ground birds do manage to proliferate and to have offspring, because if you think about the number of predators out here for eggs alone, it is absolutely insane. Then you add the fact that they're on the ground, and it's just accessible to so many others. So you've got, egg eaters in the form of a snake. You've got a number of different birds that will go after eggs. You've got monitor lizards. You've got white-tailed mongoose, genets, civets. So it's a tough time for birds to have eggs, but somehow they manage, and it's probably due to their camouflage that they're able to sort this out. So pretty incredible thing. Right, let's go to Treehouse Dam and see if maybe there's some gold at Treehouse Dam. I'm surprised at how quiet Treehouse Dam has become. It was such a sort of hotspot for activity in September, October, November, beginning of November, and since then I don't think I've seen any sort of cats here. It's been very quiet in this particular section, so maybe today is the day where we break that duck, although it doesn't seem that's going to happen. It's still beautiful from here though. You always get such a picturesque scene because you've got the sun that rises on your sort of left side if you're coming from where we are now, and then the waterhole on the right, and doesn't look like anything is lying around. You often find Hosanna kind of on the banks, or used to. It seems as though Hosanna doesn't like coming up this way anymore. Maybe that new leopard has pushed him out a little bit and is kind of scared him from coming, because that new leopard that we did see was just on the other side of Treehouse Dam. So it was just on the western side in that little thicket in the background there. That was where we had him, and so maybe that's why Hosanna is not using Treehouse Dam as much as what he used to. Difficult to say, but seems as though Hosanna has found himself a home on Little Gowrie and is absolutely loving it at the moment. You can also see that it is a still morning. There's very little in the way of wind that is affecting the surface. Those little ripples that you're seeing are mostly from the terrapins coming up and just kind of disturbing the water surface, as well as a number of different insects that we have out in this area that are also just kind of hatching and coming up off the water. But there you can see a bit of reflection and various other things. Now on the left side, so the other side of the dam where the water isn't, is also very pretty. There's this sun has risen on our left hand side, and then you've got a kind of glowy orange glow that is just filtering through the bush in places. It's very, very nice. Always think it's very pleasant from here just to stop and take it in, and even if there's no animals, it's always just nice to absorb a golden morning from the bush. You can see the kind of layers of the terrain as it goes, so that's that undulating terrain, and those are all the things that give us a few issues when it comes to gremlins. So when you think, why do we get them, you can see it quite clearly there. There's sort of 3 levels to this area, so dips and or troughs and crests as we call it, and that's what causes a bit of signal issues. So it's always nice just to see that, and then the golden light that kind of filters through it as the morning gets going. So it's been a beautiful start, and there's a little bit of cloud cover this morning that's kind of filtering the light and almost making it a little softer than it would be at this time normally. There's the clouds I was talking about. So Mita, who's 9 years old. Mita, always lovely to hear from you, and I haven't heard from you in a while, so it's always nice to hear from you. You want to know, is Thandi the new queen of Djuma? Well, I suppose yes, she is. I mean, she's now the breeding female leopard of Djuma, which means that I suppose she is the queen, and she does have the blood of royalty because she does come from Kruger. So she's just the new queen in this area and has taken over from her mom and is now kind of dominating the Djuma section, which is a good thing. It's still the same bloodline, and it's the same kind of, you know, family history, and it really is nice to have one of Kruger's offspring in this area and kind of residing over Djuma. So she seems to be, she's not quite as obliging as Kruger is just yet, but she will be. Thandi's always like this when she has cubs. Everybody is kind of concerned that she's a little bit more hidden than normal, and that's not the case. Thandi is a female leopard. When she has cubs, the first 3 months you hardly see her. So all the cubs that I've seen in my time with her, so Wabayiza, Kuchava, Bahuti, every time she's in that first little phase, she is secretive, she is difficult, she is, you know, in no way wants to have anything to do with people or anything to do with vehicles. But as soon as that process stops and the little cubs are starting to move and starting to go to carcasses for the first time and eat off meat, then you find she starts to become a very different leopard, and she starts to become incredibly relaxed, and we're going to get amazing sightings of her hopefully in the next sort of month or two. She'll start to kind of calm down a little bit, and then she's really kind of a free agent who moves around, and we know with Tumba how she eventually became. It's exactly the same thing, as she will get into that same kind of attitude later on, and all of her cubs have been like that. They start out a little skittish because of the lack of time we get to spend with them, and then we get to a point where they start to actually spend time around vehicles, and by the time they reach 4 or 5 months old, they're starting to relax, and then from there you get a situation where they are really epic little leopards to follow around. And all of her offspring have been relaxed by the time they get to sort of a year old, and all of them have been amazing leopards to watch. And it's sad that Bahuti and Wabiyiza we know was killed by the sticks. Bahuti just disappeared, but it's nice at least that we've got Kuchava, who hopefully is going to continue the legacy of Thandi down on Chitwa and Cheetah Plains area, whereas Thandi kind of started out as a dominant female and had most of her cubs. So it's a very cool system, and it's nice to have so much of the same lineage around, because it's an interesting and intriguing sort of way of life and a way of following these bloodlines. Right, I'm going to just turn around here because I don't think we'll be able to hold reception, although we should be. If we're on the Gari repeater, we should be okay. We should be able to... Ah, what's this that's flying past here? It looks like a Wahlberg's eagle that's coming along. So I believe a lot of you are complimenting Ferg and his camera work of the sun and clouds and various other things that he was looking at, and he did do a very good job, didn't he? Ferg is definitely one of the more cool, calm and collected characters within our team, and yesterday Ferg was in some bright sunshine, and he actually made a very, very cool little sort of set up for himself in the back as the Wahlberg's eagle disappears. So that's a Wahlberg's eagle, just by the way, because I forgot to tell you all that that was a Wahlberg's eagle, but it's just drifting off into the distance. But Ferg was in the back of Rusty, and it was awfully hot yesterday, and so he decided that he would sort himself out. So this is the picture I took of Ferg yesterday, and I know some of you might have seen this because I did post it onto Twitter yesterday, but there we go. That's Ferg reclining on the back of Rusty. So when it's very hot, somebody has got to try and get a little umbrella out, and that's how Ferg was driving around, just to try and keep out of the blazing sunshine yesterday. And we've now nicknamed him Mr. December, so he is going to hopefully at some stage start a calendar. Ferg, when are you going to do your calendar? All 12 months? Better than Mary Poppins, yes. You don't want to be Mary Poppins. Mr. December is far better than Mary Poppins. But Ferg, I think, is going to do a calendar. We'll just have to get him in various poses around the vehicle, and we'll try and see if we can get that out for next year's Christmas. Maybe that's what we can do. Ferg, next year's Christmas, we'll have the 12 months of Fergus. Anyway,
what month are you going to be? You're in this.
While we kind of discuss this, let's go all the way to the Mara and welcome the team on that side this morning.
And welcome aboard with me here in the Masai Mara in Kenya. And it seems that Tristan's been driving around for quite a while this morning already, but we've had a lovely start to the morning, and there is a lovely black-chested snake eagle. Now the sun just starting to come up here, and the colors are absolutely stunning. My name is Ralph Kirsten, and we've got Archie on the camera. Please everybody, join us on the hashtag Safari Live on Twitter and the YouTube live chat. Please throw us your questions and your comments, and we'd love for you to join us on this lovely morning's game drive. Wherever you are in the world, it's probably not in the morning where you are, but for us, the sun just starting to come up. Whether it's the afternoon or the evening for you, please, you're welcome to join us. And we're just going to head out here. There are some elephants just a little bit up in front of us. We're heading down towards the Mara River. We are near to the Olololo Gate. Once again, that nice tongue-twisting area of the Mara Triangle. Now, this is the area that we did have the Chitwa males the other day, the 3 of them, and that one with the little end of his tail missing. So maybe we'll find them. We have been hearing the lions roaring in the evening, and this morning when we got up as well, on our way down, they were still calling a little bit. So this marsh breakaway pride with the Chitwa males, they are in the area. And we've seen the sky ship hot air balloons, they're up in the sky, and everything is happening here in the Mara. So let's see if we can find some interesting animals. And it's always exciting to see what the wildlife is going to hold this morning. It's quite a cool morning, but nothing unusual. There's a little bit of clouds around. We did have some rain last night. Once again, a little bit of a cloud burst. It seems this is a daily occurrence. Nice and warm and clear in the mornings, and then heading towards that afternoon thunder showers. Right up front here, we've got some elephants that are grazing, so I think that will be our first point of call. It looks lovely in the shimmering glimmer of the grass with the sun coming up, making for a beautiful setting. Nice fresh dung on the road. That's obviously from these jumbos in front. As we start to see also the little long claws and the rufous-naped larks, they've all been calling as I've been driving down from the escarpment. Lovely to hear them in the early morning. So I'll just get us into a position where we can see these elephants a little bit without the sun being directly into the camera, because obviously then it's going to be just a straight silhouette. But what a lovely setting with that sun coming up over the river. Stunning. Here we go. Let's stop here, and we've got all these grassland birds starting to show themselves, calling lovely in the morning. So I'm just drifting a little bit further here. Let's just see, there's a couple of youngsters here on the right. And straight up behind them, we've got that Skyship's hot air balloon. How's that for a lovely picture there? Right, let's have a look. What a lovely setting, hey? Once again, the other day I was up in that balloon. Lucky customers there. These elephants looking down towards the rest of the group. Looks like a couple of little males, youngsters. Lovely setting that, hey? And all the birds are starting to call. I can hear the guinea fowl calling off in the distance. Now, Casey from New Zealand, you're wondering what I'm hoping to see this morning on Drive. Well, Casey, I definitely do want to try and catch up on some of the big cats. We're out the full day today. Archie and I have decided to pack ourselves a cooler box and head out and really try and discover as much as possible of the Mara Triangle here. So we're going to be heading quite some distance today, and I'd like to catch up on quite a few of the pride lions, so we'll definitely try and see if we can get you some action with the cats, Casey. But you can tell us what you'd like to see, and I'll do my best to try and find that for you as well. So, but this isn't such a bad start with a couple of elephants here. I do love watching elephants, and I'm just gonna start up in a second, and we're gonna head down because there seems a breeding herd a little bit down in front of us, and those male elephants that we were watching now have looked like they've also started to head towards them. So we're going to take their cue and follow them on down towards the breeding herd. Maybe we'll see some of the little babies. Always cute to watch baby elephants, especially the ones that are under a year old, when they haven't quite got the use of that trunk and it's like a hose pipe that's gone out of control. I love to watch that. And very often when they try to drink as well, they don't really know if they should blow or suck, so it becomes a bit crazy. Right, so I'm going to make my way down towards this breeding herd of elephants, but in the meantime, let's cross over to Taylor, who I think has got a very hairy antelope to show you.
We do have a very hairy antelope, and this is how you should be seeing waterbuck in the marshlands. This is their favorite place to hang around. It's just a pity we don't get to see it very often down in the Sabi sand, but there's definitely no shortage of sightings like this up in the Mara. Oh, well, that's quite exciting. A good way to start the morning. A male testing a female to see if she's an estrus. Good morning again. My name is Taylor McCurdy, and on camera with me today is none other than Manu. And remember, this is a live and interactive show, so you can chat to us this morning. It's not just the waterbuck that are here. What I would like to do with you this morning is I would like to use our senses today. And first up, of course, is a chorus of the frogs. So turn the volume up and have a little listen. Isn't that gorgeous? There are, of course, a couple of birds chirping as well, but the frogs are most certainly stealing the dawn chorus. And there are a couple of greater white egrets. They don't have a particularly pretty call, but they'll be hunting the frogs that you can hear. And I think that they're going to be quite successful hanging around in this spot. And somebody else that's also might be successful this morning is this male waterbuck. He's very keen on this girl. She doesn't seem too interested at the moment, though. Oh, that's lovely. I almost feel as though the sighting doesn't need me ruining it with the sound of my voice. And that, everybody, was my dream shot that I've been trying to get for the last few days now, because there's been quite a few waterbuck splashing about in this marshy area. And Manu and I have actually been watching this. I'm pretty sure it's the same female and it's the same male. There were two big males that had a fight over, obviously, this cow that's in estrus at the moment, or at least coming into estrus. So definitely a change in hormones. We can see how excited the boys have been getting. And we've also been seeing lots of mating waterbuck too. But the fact that they ran and splashed around like that, I've been dying to get a picture. So if you did get a screenshot of that, hashtag Safari Live, share it with us. Now, first question for me this morning, and that's from Michael. Thank you very much. You were wondering, what is the diet of a waterbuck? Well, they're grazers, and one of their favorite species of grass to feed on is red grass. It's actually very important to a waterbuck, but they will eat whatever else is available. So all of this lovely lush grass, which I have no idea what it is, it's growing in this marshy section. They seem to be enjoying that and taking advantage of the greenery and the good nutrients at the moment. And that's what they'll do. They'll feed on their favorite things, and as times get tough, if there's no rain, then they'll start feeding on the less favorable grass species. She's not having any of it this morning, and he doesn't want to let her out of his sight. I'm so sorry, girl. You're trapped. You've got to live here. You've actually just got to give up, I'm afraid. Now, I'm actually quite sad we didn't get to see the waterbuck having a proper fight, because they were sort of sparring with one another in this marsh, but you've just seen how he's chasing this lady around. It would have been quite spectacular. And when male waterbuck fight, sometimes it can end up in end up dying in a fatality. It's a very aggressive fight. They've got very, very sharp, thick horns that can pierce through that skin very easily. They are super aggressive antelope. You don't want to get on their bad side. So even though when we're walking out in the bush, we always worry about lions and elephants and buffalo and hippos and the rest of the big dangerous animals, don't let an antelope fool you. You wouldn't want to get in his way. Now, we are spending the day out here in the Mara Triangle. We're going to be heading down to the border of Tanzania in search of those leucistic hyena, which I'm sure will make you all very excited, and perhaps the border boys, the cheetah brothers that live down there too, and that's where we're going to go now. However, Ralph has got one of my favorite birds, and I wonder if they're looking for anything to eat.
Yes, thank you, Taylor. And this is also one of my, if not my favorite birds. It is the ground hornbills. Now, I'm just trying to get a little bit closer to them. They are a little bit difficult to follow, so I just want to try and get a nice clear view of them. Now, let's just stop here and watch them foraging a little bit. Now, there's 3 individuals here, and if any of you know about ground hornbills, they are cooperative breeders. So this would be a family unit, and these are such special birds. They are extremely rare as well, and they're on the decline, so it's great for us to be able to actually view them now. And they're in breeding plumage as well, with that lovely red color in front. I am going to try and get us a little bit closer. That one does seem like a little bit of a younger individual. It's probably one of their offspring, but we haven't been able to see them standing still for long enough to actually work out who's who in that group. But I am going to try and get forward a little bit. Let's try and spot them again. They make their nests in hollowings in very big trees, so it's quite special, their breeding or their nesting habitat, and that is a big part in the reason why they have been on the decline. Not only that, they normally only have 1 chick every 2 or 3 years, so the breeding ratio is very low, and it's quite difficult for them. Now, Sharon, you're asking if we can please listen to their call. I will do my best, Sharon. If they do start calling, we'll try and turn up the microphone and we'll see if you can hear it. Now, it is that very... oh, there's another one over here. Thanks, Archie. He was pointing out that one just off to the right. It is a very deep drum-like call, like a... It's almost like a very bass drum that you hear off in the distance. And now, Steve, good question there. What do hornbills eat? Hornbills are omnivorous, so they'll eat pretty much anything they come across. They'll eat fruit, they'll eat berries, they'll eat seeds, they'll eat insects, and they can even eat little tortoises. They peck them out their shell, which is not always very nice to watch, but hornbills, yes, the yellow-billed hornbill also do that. And there he's taking a little bit to flight. You can see that lovely wingspan with the white tips on the end of his wings. And is he going to go and land in that tree? Yep. There he is. Now, just off onto the road, if Archie can go there, there's still the 2 individuals there, so we can still watch them for a little bit. And now, we are hearing the black-bellied bustards calling as well. They do that whap, goop, whap, goop, like a popping noise after a whapping sound. But how beautiful is that? You're saying that ground hornbills seem to look the same all year round. They don't get a massive change when they're going into their breeding. They just get that little bit more sharper red to them. But you're quite correct. They don't have a massive change, and they are generally red throughout the year. Now we're just trying to get a little bit closer here to these hornbills. And there's been a lot of projects going on in South Africa where they've actually been putting drums into trees to try and make artificial nesting sites for them, because a lot of the trees get cut down to make canoes and dugout canoes, etc. So we're going to sit here and we're going to follow these ground hornbills a little bit, but in the meantime I'm going to send you 1,600 miles to the south into South Africa, and let's see what Tristan is up to.
Well, I hope that we're not going 1,600 meters, because otherwise we would have just crossed the Mara River onto the other side. But I'm just kidding. It would be a very, very short journey if that was the case. Now, as you can see, we've got some beautiful kudu females that are sitting in amongst the thickets, and this is fairly typical because, well, they like to spend time in amongst these kind of areas. But it's just so pretty. There's a bit of gold light that's filtering through the lush green vegetation, and kudu themselves are fairly elegant animals. Well, I find that they are. I know they've got big ears and they kind of are not the most sort of brightly colored antelope, but there's just something about them that is quite graceful, the way that they sort of amble around, and they've got pretty features, and I always like watching kudu, so I enjoy spending time with them. And on a morning like this where it's fairly quiet at the moment, they're a great animal to sit with, because often you hear alarm calls while you're watching them just feed. They're not a noisy feeder. It's not like the elephants that will be breaking branches and kind of grumbling and those kind of things. With these guys, they're fairly silent when they move about, and so it allows you to actually pick up on anything that's happening around you, and you can always hear if there's, like I say, impalas alarm calling, or even them themselves. If they start barking, they're a good indicator of things going on. So nice to sit with them. And like I say, it's just a beautiful morning. There's calls of various birds that are happening around us. We've had the red-crested Quran going in the background. There's been magpie shrikes. We've had our chin spot Battis with its 3 blind mice as well. So Ferg and I are thoroughly enjoying our meander through Djuma this morning. Even though nothing big has happened yet and nothing major, it's still been a very pretty morning, that's for sure. What say you, Ferg? You agree? Now, for those that follow the hyenas and are interested in the hyenas, you may be interested to know that most of the tracks for all the large hyenas that have come from Tundi's Kill are all exiting towards Hofmann's Hofmann's Arethusa. So it is a good place for us to think about maybe where they've got a den. Anyway, let's send you back across to Ralph and those ground hornbills.
Little scene unfolding here. It seems like it's either the male or the female doing a little bit of allo grooming. It was taking off some fleas or so and then eating them. It was a lovely little couple setting there as they move through the grass. It was unfortunate that we only got the little end of that. They were having such a nice little relationship, courting ritual there. And they're always re-establishing their bond, maintaining their bond with each other, touching, calling. That's obviously very good for the mutual relationship. Lovely eyes. They're always looking for anything that moves on the ground. They're in prime condition. It's lovely to see these ground hornbills. Fascinating birds. One of the bigger birds that we do get to see. And in the grouping of some of the birds that are sought after, there we go. Starting a little bit more of that allo grooming again. I think it's more to do with the actual contact than actually getting rid of any parasites there. And off he or she goes, and the second one leaving as well. Right, that was an absolutely fantastic little start to the morning. Nothing better than watching 2 or 3 ground hornbills. I'm going to start up again. There's been a request for some white storks this morning, and sorry, it sounded like white size man, I think. I'm definitely going to try and find you some white storks. I actually did see some woolly necked storks on my way down from the escarpment, and yesterday we had some yellow billed storks, but let's see what we can find stork wise this morning. It would be a fuzz man. Fuzzman, that was your request. So I'm going to try my best for you, Fuzzman. And let's see what stalks we can find down towards the river. We're making our way slowly down towards the marshy areas, and don't ask me what road I'm on. That's the beauty of getting lost and finding your way around the reserve. Archie and I have decided we're going to take all the roads that we don't know where they go. That's our objective this morning, to get as completely lost as possible. Now, the definition of being lost, I think we can't really get lost. We know where we are. We're in Kenya first and foremost. Secondly, we're in the Masai Mara, and we're somewhere in between the escarpment and the river. So lost, I don't think we can get lost at all. What do you think, Archie? He agrees. Archie agrees. We're not going to get lost. We're just going to go exploring. Okay, so we're going to head down towards the river and hopefully get as lost as possible. But let's put you over to Taylor and see what she is up to.
Ralph, if I don't get lost in the Mara, then you have no chance of getting lost. It's virtually impossible out here to do so. Woo! Right, always tricky trying to sneak past the cars. We're going to keep driving unless we see something spectacular, as we need to focus on finding action today. I've been doing too many bumbles. I love bumbling, but we have a priority out here in the Mara. Now, James, you're wondering if I can keep an eye out for a jackal or two. You won't believe it. That's what our opening shot was going to be, but the jackal were not partaking in this morning's events. We had two blackback jackal running down the road, and that's what we wanted to start on, and then they ducked off into the grass. They were a little bit skittish. But this area is known for jackals, so if I see a jackal, I shall stop for the jackals. We're just going to keep going, as we've got a long day ahead of us. And well, we know that the morning is the best, early morning is the best time to see if there's going to be any action. Well, that's when the action's going to be happening. Unless it's cheetah. I suppose anything could happen at any time of the day. Whee! Ferrari Safari. Sorry, Vicky, the answer is no. You're wondering if I can check on the Black Rock Pride and the ostrich nest. Firstly, I don't know where the ostrich nest is. Secondly, the Black Rock Pride is on the other side of the river, so I cannot check on them for you, unfortunately. When we eventually get back down onto the Masai Mara National Reserve, then yes. But for now, we're going to be heading to the far west, to the border of Tanzania, as we need to test our new repeater that we've just put up, which gives us access to a lot more of the escarpment where there's a female cheetah with young cubs. The border boys like to hang around there, the leucistic hyena, all these incredible things. So that's what we're going to be focusing on today. So sorry. Sorry to be a Debbie Downer, but I can't go that side, unfortunately. So I'm just going a little bit quick, not quickly, I'm driving less than the speed limit, but we're just going to keep on moving. Now, Josh, you're wondering if we can find Scarface. I wish I knew where he was, but I don't. So we're in his territory, we're looking, we're keeping an eye out. But I'm not really sure where he is. We saw him for a few days in a row, and then he's disappeared. He sometimes goes across the river as well, so it just depends. I don't know where he's going to be. Anyway, he's got him and his brothers have got quite a large territory around here. Maybe we get lucky and we see him, but I'm not sure. Just keeping an eye out, so I do apologize if I'm not looking back at you, but it is important. If you want me to find any animals, I have to scan for them while we're driving, and keep an eye out on the road, because well, our cars don't really go in a straight line. Sometimes they do, sometimes they have a mind of their own and veer off the road. Oh, lovely. Now Mira, who is only 9 years old. You've said that the little elephant that we had yesterday that was playing around made your day. I'm so happy that it made your day. That's very, very cool. It also made me smile. I think that was the best elephant sighting I've had so far in the Mara. I haven't had any really spectacular ones. Ones with beautiful scenery, but I think that was the best. And I had been saying how I hadn't seen a little elephant playing around for quite some time. So that was really good. No, let's not get stuck. Let's just keep going over here. Everybody wants to talk to me, but I can't talk to them this morning because we're on the move. We are racing around, just checking spots along the river, but unfortunately no lions just yet. No zebra coming down to cross. Manu's also standing up having a quick scan. It's quite nice when Manu does stand up because then he's a lot higher than what I am and can see above the grass. Now, Lady Starfire, you're wondering why I'm going down to look for a specific pride. I've just seen lions, which is why I'm saying pride. A specific group of hyena. It's because they're leucistic, but I'm not going to tell you too much about them right now because I want to keep it a surprise so that you can see for yourself. But it's basically it almost looks like a blonde hyena. It's not quite completely white, it's not albino. You can still see that it's got the spots that a spotted hyena has on it, but it's a lot lighter in color, and there are 2 sub-adults down there, which is very, very special, and we haven't put them live. We did do a safari live story on them, but that was all. Yay, the Paradise Pride! And they're unfortunately not in an off-roading area. How many lionesses can you see, Manu? I can see 1, 2, 3, 4. Was one of them that young male? Or have you got it? Oh, yes. That looks like a lioness, though. We're just trying to quickly... There we go. There's the young boy. So it's 3 adult lioness and this youngster. We did see them not so long ago, actually. We were doing a rehearsal. And I think it was a public rehearsal. Up he goes onto that. I think it's having a play. Very cool. And they were just resting up. It was quite beautiful. Actually, they were in the pouring rain, which is interesting. Now look at these guys go. Full of beans this morning, which is always fun to see. Lions charging about. Now, if they're around here, I wonder where the rest of the musketeers are. I haven't seen any sign of big male lions just yet. But that's not to say that they aren't just hiding about somewhere. But this is very cool. Let's see where they go. If they come this way, it'll be quite nice. If they go into the bushes, we're going to have to say goodbye to them, unfortunately. Because, well, we can't follow them. And there's no roads up there. Which is not good for us. They're looking good, though. They don't look too thin. They've definitely eaten in the past couple of days. Maybe they caught something small yesterday or the day before. But they do look like they could do with some food. Nothing... Oh, there's always lots of animals out here in the Mara. There's always buffalo along the river line. Obviously, there'll be hippos. There's normally a group of Thompson's gazelle. And as it starts to get a little bit warmer too, the warthogs will start waking up. Maybe that's what they will go for. Although a warthog would not be a very good meal for these 4. That would just be a little snack. They need something a little bit more substantial, I would say. It's quite nice to find the lions. My racing around paid off, which was good. Sometimes it does. But it was actually fairly quiet. The northeastern corner of the triangle is very, very quiet at the moment. And I think when we get down towards Happy Valley, which is Brent's favorite area, I think we're going to get quite lucky and see quite a few things. Now, Marcos, you're wondering how old are these lions? It's very difficult to say. Unfortunately, I was not here when they were all born, so I can just guess. That young male is probably about between 2 and 2.5 years old or so. So he'll be getting to the point where he's going to have to move off. And then that lion just to the right, you can see she's quite young as well. So I reckon that that's that male's sibling. So it's just 2 adult lionesses and then the 2 youngsters that will be between 2 and 2.5 years old. That young female, though, will stay with the pride, most likely. And that male will be chased out by the musketeers when they feel that he's going to be a threat to them. Although I don't think one young male lion would be a threat to the musketeers, even one-on-one. They've got a lot more experience, they're a lot bigger in size, and he'd probably be taught a lesson if he tried to be too feisty or too cheeky. And that's obviously who he was playing with, was his sister. But very cool though, very nice to see them out in the sun. They definitely look like they've got quite a bit of energy this morning. Just listening to all the sounds, you can see they're very, very interested in what's going on. Now, Vicky B, you're wondering if the young boy that we're looking at is big enough to hunt with kills. Most certainly, both of them, both the sub-adults, will be very much involved in the hunts now. They won't just be observing, they'll actually partake in the stalking and the bringing down of prey. Oh, listen, listen. Well, not as sort of impressive as a male lion when he roars, and the reason why it didn't sound so loud either is because we are upwind of these lions, and there is quite a breeze this morning, so that's well, lessening the sound at the moment. But did you hear that? Completely different tone to a male lion's roar. From a distance, it's very difficult to tell the difference between males and females, but when you're fairly close, you can really see it's not. You know, they don't sort of draw the out as long as a big male would. So even the lionesses call quite a bit out here in the Mara. It's something that I've definitely noticed. And that's, of course, because there's so many prides around here. It's important that they also let everybody else know that they are occupying a particular territory. That was nice, though. Woohoo! Lion roar. Done. Very cool. We've been quite lucky, Manu and I, with lions roaring over the past few days. My best was probably with the Angama pride. They must have roared about 20 times for us, but all of them, all 20 lions surrounding the car. Youngsters weren't roaring, and it seems as though those two sub-adults haven't quite found their voice just yet, but they can roar. They just need to practice a little bit. Anyways, I'll sit here for a little bit longer to see what happens. Otherwise, I might head down further along the river. Tristan is still in the Sabi sand, and he's got my favorite animal.
We do indeed. So just off to my right-hand side at the moment, or actually coming right past us, is a nice herd of ellies. We've just come out of Arathusa and are slowly meandering into Djuma a little bit, which is quite nice. It's nice to have the reverse effect from yesterday, which is animals coming to us rather than away from us. I mean, otherwise it's been a very sort of quiet morning, so nice to have these guys around. I always love spending time with them, and I know Taylor loves the ellies as well, and I'm a bit jealous actually. Talking about roaring lions, I actually don't even know the last time I sat with a roaring lion. It feels like it must have been years ago, even though it wasn't. I think the last time was with the two Birmingham males on Chitwa Open, but that's easily over a month ago. So it'd be nice to have some lions back in the area and to hear them. There is no better sound than when lions let it out. So I'm jealous of Taylor and all of you, because you all got to hear it as well. But it's such a nice little herd. It's not a big herd, it seems to be fairly small, but they kind of are all around us and they're super relaxed. And lots of little ones in this herd, as you can see by the kind of nursery unit that is filing past me at the moment. So there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 little ones in total that I can see just in this little section. Now when I say little ones, these are all individuals that are sort of under 10 years old, and they range from, I would say, 10 all the way down to the smallest one is probably, I would say, close to 3-4 years old. It's already grown a little bit, but is not that big just yet. But very cool to see. Sorry, there's my hat in the frame again. They literally are right in front of the car. How sweet is that? Isn't that the cutest thing? I think so. It's a little sibling kind of bonding that's taking place, and I'm very surprised at how relaxed they are. Generally you'll find that the younger ones tend to kind of keep their distance a little bit and will go to the adults when we're very close. But you can see the adult female is right here. She's no more than, I would say, a meter from the front of the car on the left side. So there she is over there. And we parked her and they just meandered off towards this area, now sitting with us. And this is just the most special thing in the whole world, is to be surrounded by these guys is absolutely epic. So you'll see now that the big female walks away, I think the rest of them will start kind of going and start moving off. And there we go. Can you hear that? So they're just talking to each other now. And you see how everyone stops when they do it. So one lets out a grumble, everybody stops and listens. It is very cool to hear. Hello girl, what do you want? Do you want to come eat here? Okay. So she seems as though she wants to come here, so I'm just going to roll back slightly for her and let her have a bit more space, because she wants to eat the grass, I think, that's just underneath the tree. So if we just roll back gently, she should be fine. You can see she got a bit of a kind of, hang on a second, they're moving in front of me, but she should start coming forward now that I've moved and maybe feed off that grass that she was looking at. So underneath the tree on my left hand side is a whole bunch of vegetation that she's looking for. There we go. You see? So she was just waiting for us to politely move, and now that we've moved, she's all happy. Ears are flapping again, she's feeding. So she just wants some of that vegetation that's just underneath the tree. You can see there's nice long grass there, and there's a few little plants, and so she was just kindly asking us, basically. She just came up and kind of looked at us and said, basically, you need to move, I want to go there. And so now that we've rolled back, she just came forward and started feeding. So it's not an aggressive behavior, and even though I rolled back and her ears came out, it's a good lesson to anybody that's out there that's not always aggressive. She's just reacting to my movement, but she's polite enough and relaxed enough to know that once I move back, I've made space for her, and she's then kind of going to come forward and start feeding. If she wasn't feeding, then we would have a bit of an issue, and we would probably say that there's a bit of a situation, because then she would be a little bit more kind of aware of us. But you can see she's just smelling me now, just working out what I am, and it's now because her calf has come up alongside her. So the calf came up alongside her, and she then just kind of wanted to check out what we are. There it is. You can see it's just kind of next to her. But it's always a good indication, like I say, is if they stop feeding, then you know there's an issue. If they don't stop feeding, then everything is a-okay. But very cool to see, isn't it amazing how clever they are? So it's almost as if, like I say, they just waited for me to move, and then she just came ambling forward and fed on what she wanted. Very cool. Ooh, Kathy, that's a difficult question. You're wondering what my most special elephant sighting is besides Fang. I think it depends on what we're talking about. Here at Safari Live, besides Fang, I think the day that I had in Mulawati, where we had that herd that must have been easily 70, 80 elephants, and they literally were all around us, and we spent the entire drive basically with them. I think we were there for over 2 hours in amongst that herd, and they literally just surrounded us, and we had babies, and we had bull elephants, and we had big females. It was just absolutely amazing, and there was a few young bulls that were kind of fighting, and then some really large males in amongst them as well. So that was a very special experience, just to kind of sit that long and be in the herd for that amount of time. And we literally didn't move very much at all. I think we moved the sum total of maybe 20 meters in that 2-hour period, but it was just incredible to be in amongst that many elephants and to see all the different sizes and the way that they interacted with each other. I think was a very special experience. So that, I think, is probably my sort of second best memory while I've been here at Safari Live. It was just an amazing kind of sort of afternoon with them, and there's been a couple of them swimming as well that have been very nice. Outside of Safari Live, I think the elephant giving birth when I was down at Lion Sands was a pretty special thing to see. That was an amazing sort of process to watch that little one come out, and to then see how the mother actually lay down next to it and then pulled that little one towards her teats to get it milk and got it some nutrients. And then once it had fed, she then stood up and used her trunk and basically picked that little one up and supported it while it was drinking, which was phenomenal to see. So that was very, very cool. And then I've had some insane sightings of really big bull elephants in the Kruger with massive tusks. And so when you come across those elephants that have these huge, almost almost close to 100-pound tusks, you kind of just feel dwarfed by them, and there's a sheer amazement that goes with them. So I think those are very special sightings. What else? Chobe, when they swim across the river there and all you see is these little trunks just sticking out and they feed in these waterways. That's very, very cool. And then I've had some insane elephant sightings in Tsavo East National Park up in Kenya, where there's some monstrous herds that you get up there. And one herd in particular that we saw it from the air, and there was easily, it was difficult to count all of them, but we reckon that there was upward of 500-600, maybe even closer to 1,000. So that's how many were in one herd. It was absolutely insane. We flew over them and we could see them all kind of moving around. So those kind of things are seriously special, and there's lots of elephant sightings that I've had that I'm probably forgetting that have been absolutely amazing. They tend to be such incredible creatures that are so clever and so kind of in tune with what goes on that you tend to be amazed by them most sightings that you have, and that's why I enjoy spending so much time with the Ellies. And talking about that, we're going to try and catch up with them. So like I said, it's difficult to pin down one particular sighting, but I've had a number of really awesome ones in my time. Bond, you asking if would untamed elephants let people touch them? The answer to that is probably a resounding no. Touching an elephant is probably not going to be the best idea and might land you in the Darwin Award situation. But there are situations where certain elephants, I suppose, they're not tame, but they're animals that have been rehabilitated and released back into the wild and have spent 20 years by themselves and haven't really had any human contact for 20 years, will come back towards people and actually then kind of allow them to treat them if they had something like a snare wound, or sometimes even just to show off their baby. So the reason why I know this is that I've spent some time with the David Sheldrick Wildlife Trust in Kenya, and there was a big bull elephant there that they hadn't seen in, I think it was like 26 years or 27 years, who was wild, and they actually didn't even know that he was alive anymore. And what happened was he got a snare around his foot and he came back straight towards the area where he was kind of raised and went straight to the guys that looked after him, who was still working for the company at that stage, and he kind of walked up to them. They didn't dart him, didn't use any anesthetic, and they walked up and they were able to cut that snare off. So theoretically that is a wild elephant that is allowing somebody to come and treat them, and that's, so I suppose it is possible, but there was a kind of human influence right in the beginning. Any of these elephants like this, I don't think you'd be able to do it, just because they don't know people like that. That animal, even though it was been wild for so long, at the end of the day their memory is so good that it's remembered, okay, that's where I need to go for help. So it's a little different, but I think wild elephants you wouldn't be able to go up and touch at all. Right, well, our Ellies are still meandering deeper into Djuma. I think we're going to spend a lot more time with them because it's such a wonderful thing to be around, and Ellies make me happy. And so while we do that, let's go back across to Ralph in the Mara and see what he's up to now that he's left his hornbills.
Yes, everybody, we're sitting with a very common bird that we find in most places in the game reserves and even in built-up areas, but such an iconic species as well, the helmeted guinea fowl, or as we like to call them, I like to call them the bush chickens. Very similar habitat that they do go scrounging around in. They're always kicking up the dirt, looking for grubs and seeds and all sorts of things. And very often in South Africa and in Kenya, people do put guinea fowl eggs with their chickens, and they then breed together with them. But lovely to see them out in the bush here. There's only a couple of them here, and it is that time for breeding as well. And in South Africa at the moment, in Djuma, we use them quite a lot with their alarm call to identify where predators are, but they've been confusing us quite a lot in the recent times because they're also nesting. So they have been a little bit territorial, and this looks like a breeding pair as well. So they are starting to split up into those pairs. You generally see them in much bigger groups. So, often overlooked, but nice to stop and watch them because They are iconic and they are rather beautiful if you look at them like that. Now, well, it's in the eye of the beholder, and I know that yesterday Taylor was making the challenge of the ugly five. I definitely think that these guinea fowl could maybe fall into that one of that categories, especially once you zoom in closely on their face. So Taylor had the marabou stork, I believe, yesterday. I think the helmeted guinea fowl, definitely one of those faces that only a mother could love. But all right, let's start up and move up a little bit. We are moving through a little bit of a thickets here. It's this orange leaf croton thickets, and Archie tells me that they have seen a few black rhino in this area. So right, okay, let's go over to Tristan, who I believe has got some elephants doing something very exciting.
They are indeed. Look at this Ellie. He's decided it's all too much for him this morning and has just flopped down onto the road and is having a little nap and a playtime. There's been sand has been thrown around and it is all very kind of playful. It's super cute when you see elephants doing that, and you can see there's a couple of younger ones that are coming to join in now as well. And I don't think playtime is over. I think we're going to see a lot more flopping about and falling over. And this is all just a bit of fun that they're having. I suppose it's also maybe a little tired. I wouldn't be surprised that one flops down on top. There we go. Typical elephant, bum in the air, head down, and that's how they kind of lie. And they always do this. They'll go on top of each other and kind of lie next to each other, particularly the young ones. It's all part of kind of a bonding and playing process. And so how cool is that? It's a little kind of elephant pile that we've got going on. And oh, it looks like it's falling. Oh no, oh no. Are we going to over... looks like it might topple over. Yeah, there we go. We've managed to sort it out. We're now on our knees. Although, let's see how they go. It looks like they're going to carry on. The rest of the young ones haven't come out yet, so let's see how when they come out, because maybe the games will continue when the rest come out, although it looks like everybody's moving off into the bush. But how cool is that? There we go. Game over. Super cute though, and amazing to watch. So we're going to try and just catch up with them. This is why I love elephants, is because there's always something that they're up to. So even though it might not be as exciting as maybe a lion's roar or something like that, but they're always doing something. There's always these kind of social interactions with them, and there's these sort of deep knowledge that they've got of their area and what they're doing, and even the way that they feed is interesting. So I love spending time in amongst the Ellies like this. So Rebecca, you're wondering, in a massive herd of elephants that's 80 plus, would there be more than one matriarch? Well, Rebecca, it depends. I mean, most of the time those herds, particularly here in Kruger, herds of 80 plus is herds that have joined together because of some sort of environmental reason, whether it be a food source, lack of water, that they've congregated around a water source. And so then, yes, there are multiple matriarchs in there, and the herds have all come together, and they'll split apart again when environmental conditions become more favorable for the herds to split. So in that case, yes. In other parts of Africa, so in like the Chobe, let's say, where you've got 80 elephants plus is common in a herd, then no, then you typically will find that it's kind of the one matriarch, and then you'll find her daughters help out a little bit, but it really is only the one, and that herd is fairly set, and they'll kind of move around together. Here, those kind of herds are very uncommon. It's only when, like I say, there's an environmental issue that causes them to come together in bigger groupings, and then multiple matriarchs join in together, and they often are related to each other. So even though they might form separate herds for most of their life, once they kind of come back together, they'll recognize one another, and then they join and form these mega herds, so to speak, and that's when you get that. Now, the Ellies, I was hoping were going to come crossing in front of us, but it seems like one or two have come behind us, and the rest of them are sort of dotted about, but it's so thick and the vegetation is so dense that it's actually difficult to be able to even see them. So, Michael, this is an interesting question, and one that I suppose is difficult to measure, but there is most certainly sort of something to be said about it. But you're wondering how much of an effect does a young bull being pushed out of his herd and out of his natal territory affect his psyche and his emotional state? And affect him as in general as an animal? Well, I think there is a major effect at the end of the day. Remember that these elephants are a tight-knit community. You can see with just the feeding process that goes on. The young ones are together, and they generally are quite close to their moms. And so when that sort of bond is being broken and it's now being chased by its mother, it must be a very confusing time. It must be kind of a situation where this bull is, doesn't really want to go away. It also knows that being in this group is nice and secure. It doesn't have to worry about things like lions and hyenas that much because everybody helps it out and protects it. And so they do become quite sort of down about things, and you can see they're a little bit kind of lost when they first leave. But it's why they join big adult males. So you'll find that often big bulls are accompanied by these smaller, littler guys, and they learn from those big bulls, and they find comfort and sort of safety within these small groupings together. And so that's why you do see bulls often in sort of accompanying one another, and they will then sort of only break apart if they're mating and if they're trying to find a female. But most of the time they'll then join up and just try and learn from each other and try and support each other and kind of have a group together. So very intelligent animals that are very clever and get very kind of affected by emotional changes. So it's important that they do find company in the form of other bulls or in the form of a big male that they can learn from. So they do it, and it's interesting to watch. And when I was in Kenya, and we were talking earlier about the bull that came with a snare, I found a lot of the time that some of the individuals and the young ones, particularly when they were orphaned, so we're talking about elephants that are 2 weeks old to all the way to 2-3 years old, their responses to losing their mother was massive. They often would just go and sit in a corner, head would be stooped, they would cry for the mom, and they would try and kind of look for it, and they really kind of were isolated. And only when they started joining the other elephants and started interacting with that, their characters start to change, and the normal sort of character would come out, and they'd become a lot more happier and joyful. So I would imagine that even at that age, if they're experiencing those kind of things, then when they get a little bit older and become these bulls that are so used to a certain way of life, it must be very difficult to change that process. The thing is, it's also a much slower process than just kind of their mom being removed from the system and them being orphaned. It's more kind of slowly but surely they kind of pushed out of the herd. I suppose that helps with things as well a little bit. But here we go, they kind of come across the road now. I think it's the thing with Ellie's, and it's part of the reason why there's so much emotion that is attached to elephants and why so many people absolutely love them, is because of those things, because they do express emotion, they are intelligent enough, and that there is a complicated social structure to them that they evoke a lot of emotion in us as people, because there's a lot of similarities. There's a lot of, from their lifespan to the way that they go about things, the way that they almost seem to be despondent if they lose something, or if they react in certain ways with fear or joy or all these kind of things, which is something we can identify with. And maybe that's what draws us so much more towards elephants. And apart from their big size and their astonishing features that sort of overpower your emotions, and that you have the sheer wow kind of look to them, there's also all of these little traits that endear them to us as people and make them kind of far more sort of, we can relate to them a lot more than what we would with maybe something like an impala. So it's a pretty interesting thing, and they're amazing from that point of view. But I would love to know if there's any studies done on young bulls and their psyche. I suppose the Pilanesberg is a great example. So the Pilanesberg National Park is a park in South Africa. It is not too far, sorry little one, is not too far from Johannesburg. And what they did there, and this is probably shows exactly what effect it has when a young bull elephant leaves a herd. What they did there is they didn't have elephants, so they reintroduced elephants from the Kruger Park area, and they took a lot of young bulls, so bulls that were between, I think they were about 20 years old, most of them, and they dropped them off inside the Pilanesberg with the idea that these would become the dominant territorial bulls in a few years' time, and they would be the breeding stock that they would have within that area. And so what they did is they took these guys, but they didn't take any of the really big guys into that section, and those bulls that they took, those younger ones, became a real problem because they were not controlled by any male, so they weren't looked after by any male, they weren't disciplined, they weren't kept in check, and so the hormones and things just went out of control, and probably the stress of not being able to find their family, they then started to attack rhinos in particular and killed a number of different rhinos, and as well as a couple of vehicles got rolled around and smashed and all kinds of other things. So they were a bit of a handful, and it was only once they then introduced big old bulls from the Kruger, so they got a couple more of older bulls, all of that nonsense stopped. So as soon as the big guys got in there, they were able to kind of teach these little ones and try and get them back into a situation where they behaved a lot more normal. So it's an interesting behavior, and interesting that, you know, that can happen even though they're not related to those bulls. They kind of came in and just settled everything right down. Right, I'm just trying to think where's best for all of these ellies. They're kind of just meandering around on both sides of the road, and like I was saying, it's so dense here with all these bush willows and terminalias that it's actually quite tough to see them. You'd think that a whole herd of elephants would be quite easy to see, but they're actually sort of all spread out around us and difficult and obscured. So, Don, they don't have a fixed territory. They've got what's called a home range. So, a home range is an area that they do move around in, and they will kind of adapt according to environmental changes. So, drought periods, that home range expands. In times of good rains and water and lots of vegetation, the home range kind of decreases a little bit. But most of them have an area that they'll move around in. It's not a defined, fixed, set boundary like you'd see with things like rhino or cats. These guys tend to have a lot more in the way of sort of fluid boundaries that they move around in, and it's not even really boundaries for them, it's just areas that they don't really like to move out of. And so home ranges for them, and very fluid movement of their kind of areas, and according to what's around and what they can get, and in terms of resources, will dictate how big their territories or their home ranges are and where they move around. And also it just depends on the size of the herd as well. The bigger the size of the herd, generally, the bigger the home range that they tend to have, because they've got to find enough food and water for a massive grouping, whereas, you know, smaller groups, let's say like Short Trunk, who's got just that herd of 4 or 5, sometimes there's a young bull with them, she doesn't really have to move around that much, because feeding 5 elephants as opposed to feeding 80 is 2 very different situations. So it also depends on herd size. Just amazed at how relaxed this particular herd is. They are absolutely chilled with us. They have not moved at all very fast. They kind of, even though I'm in amongst them, I haven't had one of them really give us any sign of being too perturbed by us. It's actually quite amazing, and the proximity to us that they come at is quite close. It's a lot closer than some of the other herds we've had recently, so nice to see. It's always great when you get herds like this where they are completely trusting of you being around them. It makes for an incredible morning, that's for sure. You can also see how it's just such a kind of feast at the moment. You can imagine after the few years of really dry weather, and even though we're not exactly kind of inundated with water at the moment, we have got a situation where we've got a lot more vegetation around than we did maybe 2 years ago. And so it must be so nice for the ellies. They've just got all these different types of food that they can feed on. They've got knobthorns and bush willows and grass and forbs and all kinds of trees that are blossoming and flowering, and berries that are starting to form on the guarries and marula trees. So there's all kinds of things happening, and it must be just a massive food buffet for the ellies, and they are taking full advantage as they go along. Right, let's try and kind of keep up with them. They're just leaving us behind slightly. So, Cheryl, you're asking, you looked at a video from last year and you say it looks so different compared to now in terms of the amount of green that we've got now as opposed to last year. Well, it depends when that video was taken last year. If it was taken in August, September last year, then it would have looked horrific. It would have been barren. There wouldn't have been grass. There wouldn't have been leaves. It would have looked really, really bad. And it was. The drought was very serious. It was not an easy time for animals. And you're wondering how much it affected the ellies. Well, the elephants probably of all the animals were, I don't want to say least affected, but they weren't as badly affected as things like kudu and buffalo and hippos. Those three really got hammered during the drought period. You know, the ellies, even though they are such big feeders and they need a lot of vegetation, they're also very resourceful animals. And so even though it looked like on the surface that there was nothing going on, so there was no vegetation, there's still roots and tubers that are underneath the ground, and there's still cambium layer on trees that they can utilize, because trees will still have some semblance of nutrients in them. So a lot of the elephants lost condition, yes, and got skinnier, but there wasn't this die-off like we saw in the buffalo and the hippos. The buffalo and the hippos, kind of their numbers crashed quite heavily. We had a situation where, you know, we were finding 2, 3, 4, 5 dead buffalo a day here in this particular section, whereas the ellies, you know, they lost a bit of weight, but they actually were quite fine otherwise. So, you know, they did okay, but it did affect them. I mean, you might find that in a couple of years' time, so 2 years' time, we might have a lower number of births from calves. Maybe there was a couple of calves that just didn't make it, so there might have been a few stillborns. There might have been a situation where, you know, there wasn't enough nutrients that the fetus was ejected before it was even kind of growing properly. So those kind of things might take place, and the knock-on effect will be realized then, because they're an animal that sort of has such a long gestation period. It's difficult to know what the knock-on effect on their breeding was, but they definitely did get a lot skinnier, that's for sure. So all of our ellies, unfortunately, were on a bit of a diet during that time, and you could start to see that it was really taking its toll. Luckily, the rains came fairly quickly after that, and there wasn't then enough food to start sustaining them. And we're talking about droughts and things like that. The drought is by no means really over. I mean, yes, we've got a lot of vegetation, and you see a lot of green and those kind of things here, but it's still very dry. I mean, you look at most of the dams around here: Gowrie Dam, Treehouse Dam, Twin Dams, Sydney's Dam. I mean, Sydney and Gowrie are almost dry. There's very little left in both of those, and if we don't get rain in the next 3-4 weeks and high temperatures like we had yesterday, you'll find both of those dams are going to probably be just mud. And then the others, you know, the water level is not very high considering where we are. We're in December, which is midway through our summer now, and we still haven't really gotten the rain to top off those dams, and so if we don't get enough rain to top that off, by next year it's going to be a very similar situation. We're going to have a really tough time of it, but at least there's been a growth of vegetation, which is always a wonderful thing. And so, you know, the animals at least are going to be able to feed, but water will start to become an issue if we don't get more rain. And the reason why we don't have rain that's filled up our dams is because the type of rain we've had has been very different. So normally this time of the year we get massive thunderstorms, big deluges of rain that come down, so we'll get, you know, maybe 100 mils in an hour, 100 millimeters an hour, so I don't even know how many inches that is, but it's a lot. And so we'll get that very quickly, and that kind of causes a lot of runoff. And so while it doesn't soak into the soil and into those areas, it does cause a massive amount of runoff, which then drains into these dams and fills them up nice and full. Whereas what we've had this year has been kind of frontal rain that's come in from the ocean, and it's been soft dappled rain, and that means that we've had good vegetation growth, but we actually haven't filled up too many places. So it's interesting to see how the two types of rain affect our water table. Right, well, we'll probably carry on from these ellies now. I want to just go and meander around and go and check. I might go to the hyena den, but while we do that, let's go across to Ralph, who is meandering in the Mara himself.
Yes, thanks, Tristan. It definitely seems like very dry conditions in Djuma and in the Sabi sands in general, but we've got totally different conditions here in the Mara. It's very wet. We've just been sloshing through the marshy zone, and I think we've just managed to catch up with the same 3 individual ground hornbills. They've almost been following us, so this is nice. We've done a very big loop, and we've found him now a little bit more in the open. So this is nice as they walk along foraging, looking for anything that moves, any lizards or little tortoises or grasshoppers, and then any seeds, etc., that might go with it. A lovely setting now. The sun has gotten up a little bit more. It's getting a bit warmer. I might be taking my jacket off quite soon. But a nice morning for these hornbills to be foraging through the grass plains. Please don't forget to send us your questions and your comments, folks. on Twitter and on the YouTube live chat. I'm still looking for some storks, as the request was a little bit earlier, but this is definitely not a bad sighting at all. You see how they move through, they spot something, they grab it with that big bill, and they literally throw it back into the back of their throat. That's actually amazing to watch. Watch what he does now. What has he found there? Yeah, whatever it was got thrown back without that looks like a bit of a grasshopper or locust. Sometimes do need to just shake it around, make sure that it doesn't have any stings on it. Nice long bill, and like the bee eaters, but obviously a much bigger scale, keeping any stings and dangerous parts away from the eyes. Marcus asking the question, how long do hornbills typically live? That's a very good question, Marcus. I'm going to actually have a look in my book as we watch these individuals walking across here. I would hazard a guess at saying probably between, I don't know, 6 and 10 years. But let's maybe get a little bit of an indication here from my bird book. I would think between 8 and 10 years. They are cooperative breeders, so it's not a very short life. They're quite a large bird as well, and as I have said, they breed every 2 to 3 years, so it's quite an extended life, I think, for a bird. But let's see. Let's have a look. Sammy Jane, you'd like to see what their feet look like, if Archie can go in there quite nicely. Now remember, they are ground birds, and with hornbills, when we do tracking, we call hornbills the flying bananas, because obviously from the typical yellow-billed hornbill, which is the one that we see the most commonly, you do get that impression that it is a flying banana from the bill, but then from the track as well, because you've got the 3 toes forward and they curve slightly to the side, so it also looks in the track like a banana. Very close. I will have a look. Do I have my tracking book? But I will show you when I get a chance. The hornbill, I'm still looking to see if I can find out their longevity, which I'm not seeing in this book. It's got a loud booming duet, oomph, oomph. That's how they describe the calling. Always interesting to note the way that they spell the calls of different birds. But as I say, their feet are not in the book here. I do have a tracking book, but I'm not sure if I brought it along with me. No, I didn't, because I'm not tracking today. I'm not on foot, so I didn't bring my tracking book, but I've got another book that I'm going to have a look in, a little wildlife book. I just want to try and illustrate it nicely for you with a picture. But let's have a look at it. You still got them there, Archie? Yes, you do. Right, 142. Okay, you can come in a little bit here, Archie. At least you can see the foot structure. Okay, nice and close there. Okay, just on the bottom there, Archie, you can see, so there's 3 toes forward and 1 toe back. Now remember, that's because it's being a ground bird. It's not typically for perching, so grabbing onto branches, etc. It can, and it does, but it's predominantly on the ground. So it does need very strong feet for walking on the soil. And if you go a little bit up onto that one there, Archie, you can maybe see that a little bit better there. And that gives you a slight better indication of how those 3 toes forward and 1 toe at the back, that's on a grey hornbill. But all very similar foot structure of the hornbills, just on a bigger scale. So very interesting to see that flying banana, but also in the track. Now, let's continue along. I'm going to be heading down towards the river as those hornbills disappear off into the distance. Now, I think we were going across to Tristan, and let's see what he is up to.
Hi, my name's Tristina. No, I'm just joking, it's not. No, wrong person, Roll. We did have a hyena, but it's moved away a few minutes ago. So we are now just driving. We're still maybe about 10 kilometers or so from the Purangut Bridge. We haven't quite reached our destination just yet, but we have to start looking here because this is also a spot where the border boys come up to, the Chitwa brothers. They like it around here, but I'm not going to look for them right away. What I want to do first is a pride of lions that I'm looking for. And just before I went on leave, I spent some time with them. I think Brent calls them the Happy Valley Pride, something along those lines. And there was one lioness that was quite pregnant, and then Brent actually mentioned it to me as well. And I reckon she would have gotten den by now, because it's a short gestation period. So I'm just keeping an eye out for them at the moment. But we're essentially gonna check around here in these valleys, and hopefully we're gonna find that pride of lions, which should be quite exciting, maybe even a den site. But off you go back to South Africa to Tristan, who has got a really cool little raptor.
Well, we did have a shikra which was on that branch, but unfortunately, as Taylor said, we are going across to South Africa. It flew away, so it obviously knew that we were coming back, and it was what we were looking at is this little bird of prey here, this area, and they've got these bright yellow legs, a yellow sort of cere, and then this very cherry red eye. And it was nice because the way it was sitting there, the light was catching this eye, and you could see that deep red in the eye color, but unfortunately it flew away, which is the way birds go. Birding when not live is always very, very difficult. Right, let's carry on. Maybe it will come up again. It's typical, it's Murphy's Law. It's sat there, we've been sitting here for I would say over 5 minutes. We've been sitting watching that bird, and it was perched and fluffed up and didn't look as though it was going to move. And then, of course, you know, these things happen, and it then kind of swooped down and grabbed what looked like maybe something, sort of termites. We get a lot of winged owlets around at this time of the year, so maybe that's what it grabbed, or something else. I'm not quite sure, but it flew off anyway. I'm not making it up. Right, what else are we going to find? So I'm just checking around, trying to have a little look and see what could be around. I'm up on the western sort of side of Djuma, and hoping that, you never know, maybe a mvula, maybe this unknown male leopard is sneaking about, maybe even the Angama pride, who knows. It's worth checking. There was that buffalo herd at Sydney's Dam yesterday, so you never know if that kind of buffalo herd might have dragged some lions onto our side. It's possible, and failing all of that, so like I say, I'll go to the hyena den and go and check up on that little one and see if it is still alive, and see what's going on there, because I know a number of you have been asking and wondering what's been happening there and whether or not everything is okay. So we'll go and just have a little squiz there and just check what's going on and get an update. I'm not sure it's going to be active, but it will be worth a look anyway. Right, just trying to think what else there can be that we can go and check for. I mean, it's a bit quiet on the sort of cat front. I don't think anyone has even got a single track. The Styx Pride has gone down into Mala Mala. Hosanna's on Little Gari. No sign of Shadow in the Cub, so a little tough in terms of our spotted friends and our tawny ones as well. So Nikki is saying that Scott is doing a boring game drive and is not really contributing to our morning. Well, no, Nikki, I think Scott is doing a sterling effort. He's checking all the places that I can't check with Rusty at the moment because of Rusty's signal stories. And so if there's something around there, then maybe I can even just meet up with Scott and change vehicles quickly and go there. So it is all valid and all useful, so we have to be very thankful for Scotty. And it's so good to have him around and back again. It's been a long time since I've worked with him, but his zest and his energy for the bush and just the kind of love for being out here is infectious, and it drives everybody else to, you know, enjoy the bush a lot more, and he kind of encourages a lot more sort of movement of everybody out into it and enjoying the environment that we're fortunate enough to be in. So it's been really good to have him back and thoroughly enjoying kind of spending time with him out here again and working with Scotty down in Djuma for the first time. So it's been very, very cool. Now you can see that there are some impalas that are just drifting around in front of us, and this is a little bachelor herd, and they probably have just come off the open sections we've just driven through. So around Sandy Patch, Impala Plains, you'll find that that's where they would have spent the night, and now that the sun is up and getting quite warm, they're now drifting into these thickets to start feeding for the day. At the end of the day, they're going to look for shade and they're going to be looking for food, and so when you go into the thickets, there's plenty of both, and it means that they can at least have a good kind of rest as well as gain the nutrients that they need. As soon as they're out in the sun, it obviously gets really warm and it's difficult then to control temperature. There's dehydration that is an issue, and so better to try and seek shelter now that the cats are probably starting to slow down. It is starting to get much warmer, and I think we're in for another scorching day like we were yesterday.